No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, we're going to continue our discussion that we started last Monday on leadership mistakes. And again, if you did not get to listen to last Monday, feel free. I thought we were going to talk about more leadership mistakes than we did, but the ones that we talked about were so impactful that we just kept going on them, but they're really important. And this is based on feedback we got after our kind of career-altering or career-ending leadership mistakes episode that we did a few weeks ago. And the feedback we got from it was from people who said, hey, I get this. I definitely know people whose careers have been ended or seriously stalled out because of these big mistakes, but I'm more worried about the little mistakes that I might be making on a daily basis that aren't gonna get me fired, but that are really gonna hinder my ability to perform as a leader and to gain the trust of my people. So let's talk a little bit more about that. And obviously we brainstormed this, we came up with a lot of notes. All of these notes are based on mistakes that we've made basically in our past as we have gotten better at being leaders and, in the early parts of our career. Again, go listen to last Monday. We talked about not actually taking the time to create relationships with your people, being unavailable to them if they have time, if they request time for you. Today, I want to kind of continue this conversation about those mistakes. The first one I want to talk about, and this is something that I think is huge, is not actually focusing on developing the talent that your people have. And I this is important because developing talent is different than just kind of noticing talent. I think a lot of leaders think developing talent is what you do when you place people correctly. Oh, this person is talented for doing this thing. Let's make sure they're doing this role and then just see how they do it. It's yeah, not everybody is going to be fantastic at everything the first time they do it. In fact, most people have to get better over time. And as a leader, I feel like my job has turned into less about what do you call it? A headhunter, like a model headhunter agency where it's let's find the right person and put them in the right role. That's part of it, but a lot of it is seeing the seeds of what that potential could be and then saying, all right, if I spend time with this person, they could go from good to great when it comes to this particular thing. And that's what actually taking the time to focus on developing talent is.
Yeah, well, to your point, it's so multifaceted when you think about actual people, everything from talent assessment to talent placement to then talent development to then understanding the balancing of a team and there's so many parts and pieces to this. And as I say time and time again, and I know I think I did a Thoughtful Thursday about this probably years ago at this point, but there's a thin line between development and delegation. A lot of leaders believe that delegation of responsibility or task and kind of that idea of forced development, I'm gonna give you these things and let's see what you do and we're gonna fill up your plate. And yes, that there are parts of that where people need to kind of take on a responsibility. They need to go in a little bit to show their ability to apply what they can do in one space into another space. There are bits and pieces of development where these things kind of have to exist. But as a whole, if you're not actually taking the time to not only take what you observe as a leader when you're developing people, but then sit down and hear what their kind of take is on it. How are they feeling about their own development? How do they assess themselves? How do they assess themselves in comparison to others? What are the things they're looking to achieve? If you're not taking all of this information in and then actually creating a plan of saying, okay, based upon what I see, based upon what you say, and putting this together in the work that we do, if you're not at that level of detail, then I don't know that you can sit there with your hand up and say I am truly developing my people. And I think that it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of intent, proactiveness, and planning as a leader to get to that level of actually developing people. But that is what I believe it takes for the long term if you're truly looking to help people, polish the skills that they have, the experiences they bring, while also feeling safe enough in a space to challenge themselves and become uncomfortable in the things that they have to work on, look in the mirror, define, and then go at, challenging themselves to get better at.
Right. I also think a large part of developing talent has almost nothing to do with the job description they're doing. I have said for the longest time that your individual employees want a few things from you. They expect a few things from you. If you want them to engage fully, to not be job hopping every 2 to 3 years, if you want them to kind of stay with you as a leader, one of those things that is so key, critical, important to them is growth. And growth doesn't mean you teach them how to do their job better. Growth means you teach them how to be more marketable. You teach them how to be more prepared to exist in whatever the workforce is going forward. Think about the last time you saw somebody on a Zoom meeting where it just looked like they had never been on a Zoom meeting before. It's such a big part of our lives now that you might have to think back a year the last time you saw that happen. But I promise you, there were video calls you had in March and April and May of 2020 where the camera's looking up the nose and people don't know they don't know how to use the technology, whatever it is. All of those things, if you as a leader know how to do something like that, sitting down and teaching somebody how to do that isn't about necessarily making them better at their job. It's about making them better at all jobs, making them better as developers of talent themselves and finders of talent and leaders of leaders. These are all skills that are transferable from the job they are currently doing to the next one they will do, because the likelihood of this being their last job, the one they're doing right now reporting to you, is virtually zero. So the whatever you can do to develop people on the level that says, I'm not just looking to develop you on the things that I can benefit from. Like, I'm going to help you get better at the things that make you better at your job, because when you're better at your job, I get the accolades of having a team that is good at their job. No, it's what are you doing to develop them from a standpoint of, they're going to take these skills and go elsewhere with it eventually. And that's fine, because you're making an investment in them as individuals, and you're just trusting that they're going to pay that back to you in dividends when it comes to their job performance and their engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's such a critical piece, and something that that the leaders should be considering constantly and reflecting on and thinking about. And again, I still believe to this day that one of the best ways to help you think about developing your people is to make sure that you're developing yourself. And how much time do you spend?
So important.
Making sure that you are getting better, that you are getting sharper, that you're able to take from your mentors or your leaders what you need to continue to show up differently for your teams.
Yeah, we all know leaders that are the one-trick ponies. They're really, really good at that one thing, and so they keep bringing it out. They keep doing it. It's like when you see a comedian do stand-up, and you see them in two totally different settings, because you maybe happen to catch them on YouTube, and then you watch them on Tonight Show or whatever it is, and you see the same joke told twice, and they were so good at writing it that it came off almost like they were saying it off the cuff, that it wasn't just carefully scripted and planned. The first time you saw it, it was so great. You see it done again, and they're wearing different clothes, they're in a different setting, but it sounds exactly the same thing. It's almost jarring. It's like, wait a minute, you did such a good job of telling this the first time in a way that seemed so natural and unscripted that I was taken in by it, and hearing it completely different and seeing that it is an exact script that you have carefully crafted to the syllable. It makes you really great at what you do as being a stand-up comedian. I promise you see that out of a leader, and you see them talk to somebody else and say the same words to them the way they said it to you, it becomes, wait a minute, now this person isn't tailoring their approach to me based on who I am and the relationship we have. They just only know how to do this one thing, and they're going to do it to everybody. And the hard part about that, the impression you give when you do that as a leader, is that it's the old, like, if the only tool you have in your tool bag is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail. All of your people, they have a different set of problems, and if you are applying the same solvings to each of those problems, they're not going to be effective, and you might come off convincing at first, but you're going to quickly lose your credibility if you are not developing yourself and getting better at those skills to be able to then have more tools in your tool bag that will help you develop your people. The next thing I want to talk about in terms of leadership mistakes is not giving feedback to your people on a regular basis about their performance. And that last part is the key there, because I think a lot of leaders that I know have gotten better at giving regular feedback. It's become such an important part of the culture of many organizations to give regular feedback, that these one-on-ones and the career conversations, they're scheduled out sometimes weeks or months in advance. I in the consulting that I do, I hear less instances now of people saying, the last time I talked with my leader was my last performance review a year ago, and I get to talk with them once a year. That used to happen a lot, and I know it still happens, but it happens less now. A lot of leaders are getting better on that cadence, but they are still avoiding conversations about performance feedback. Am I doing the job well? What things am I not doing well? Examples of where I'm not doing it well, and how can I get better at it? Not in the ether, kind of like, oh, I think you're not doing this right. Actual tangible examples, because you have the credibility to give them, because you watched them happen in the moment, and you can give examples and cite it, and it has to do with the performance. And this is where I think it's critical.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's, as I've learned, right, in my career and continue to work on, is it's a balance of informal and formal. Because I believe that while a lot of times those that are comfortable talking about performance and end role and how are you measured and what do you need, and hey, we need to fix this, or like, walk me through that. Like, there can be a lot of conversations about performance. There can be a lot of conversations about how you're measuring success and where you need to perform and where the things that we have opportunities with. But I've also learned that there has to be a decent amount of balance of both of the, let's talk about that as we grow our business day to day, week to week, in different meetings and different conversations here and there. But there also has to be an element of formality, because the formality allows you to build process in such a way that role models for your leaders how they can then take the same type of process and approach to their people. And it can be difficult for some leaders where if you're more comfortable in the informal space and I can make it work, and I know I can get my point across, and I know that I've got the relationships, the loyalty, the trust of a team where they will show up, they understand it, they will get better, they know what they're going to do, they'll be able to show it to me. Not everybody has that, and for leaders to be able to start to establish the ability to have success longer term, for many of them, there is the process that comes out of having the formal conversations about performance, not in a bad way, not in the I'm only having it formal when I need to hold people accountable, but in the let's sit down and talk about it. Let's pull the data. What do you see? What do I see? Fine, let's get that down. What is the goal? What are we trying to achieve for the month or for the quarter? What does that look like every week? When are we going to have a follow-up conversation? That can be super helpful for not just certain leaders to have a clear expectation of the role and the expectations, but it's helpful in establishing a cadence of a process that can be replicated when different leaders leave a business, whether they get promoted, they move, they transfer. That process part is really necessary for longevity of performance, and to make it less about the talents of the individuals and more about the ability of people to effectively apply the process to the work they're trying to do.
I like what you said about having the balance, because I think it's the conversations, the feedback conversations that have nothing to do with performance. It's those being done effectively that give you the credibility and the right to have the conversations when it comes to feedback on performance. If you just are having feedback conversations about performance, that will get very old very quickly, even if they're done the correct way. So the work that you do in advance of these conversations is just as important, because the person has to trust you. You don't get to give them feedback about their performance in a way that they will actually take and effectively use it to create change in their behaviors and getting better if they don't already inherently trust you. And that is done in the conversations that have nothing to do with feedback about performance. But a lot of the leaders that I know who are really great at that other step, at creating that trust, they almost look at it as that when it comes to feedback about performance, they're going to lose the trust if they start talking about performance. It's like, no, my feedback sessions are about broader scope things, how to get better at life, and what's the next step? What's the next promotion that you want? Those are all great. You need to have those conversations. those conversations give you the right to have those conversations about feedback. One of the things that you said in an episode a long time ago is that you have an expectation, your people always know that they can come to you anytime they want to talk about what the next step is for them. If they want something, or if there's a position opening up and they think they want to go for it and they want to talk to you about it, your door is always open, but they need to also understand that in that conversation, you're also going to talk about performance. And it does two things. One, it makes them know that this is important to you. Whatever the results are important to you. And a lot of them end up opting out because they go, ooh, I want to talk about getting promoted because that feels good. I don't want to talk to Lorenzo about my performance. Well, if you don't want to talk to Lorenzo about your performance, it probably means you aren't a shoo-in for that role, whatever it is that you were going to go for. If you want to talk to Lorenzo about that next role and that next promotion, and you're thinking, yes, and I want to talk to him about my performance, at the very least, that means that you probably have a good opinion of your commitment to it, and you can at least hang in that conversation. And I think it's just so important to make sure your people understand that this is a regular part of the business, is feedback about their actual performance.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
The 1 minute hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 minute hack, here's what I want you to do. First, go listen to last Monday's episode on the first mistakes that we were talking about, because the 1 minute hack has to do with being very intentional on your calendar and planning out time for your people. This is a follow-up to that. When you're being intentional on your calendar and planning out time for your people, you need to prepare for these meetings. And preparation means being able to talk about their performance in their job with actual examples on what you have seen in the moment. If you don't have the ability to have these examples to talk about on what they're doing right and what they could improve on, and it's just kind of like based on a number you see on a scorecard, not the actual behaviors that they are doing, then you need to take time to start watching that so you have those examples. Or if you're a leader of leaders, talking to the level that's in between you and them, and making sure you get behavioral examples so that you have the credibility. Nothing feels worse than getting feedback about your performance that's not rooted in your actual behaviors, that's rooted in what somebody took from a scorecard. As a person who has received feedback like that, it doesn't feel good. It feels like the person wants to be able to tell you to get better at something, but they don't even know how you got there to begin with. That is never a good thing. So feedback about performance includes actual examples. So when you're planning out your calendar, plan it out in terms of having the time to be prepared for these meetings that you're having with your people so that the performance feedback is accurate and it's effective.
Yeah, I firmly believe that kind of performance and outcomes is the ultimate measure of development, because the idea here is that if you're spending the time helping your people to become better, more confident, more focused, more capable, more efficient, more effective, well, that should show up in the job they do. Like those things should show up in their absolute output and their performance. So like that's how, in my mind, those two things connect. And it's so important, to your point, to really prepare to have that level of dialogue, because now we're actually talking about real development. And now we're actually talking about and addressing the things that will be helpful for them today, to make them more capable of being able to have opportunities tomorrow.
Right. As a throwback from 16 or 17 years ago now, we've heard it many times, results equals credibility equals opportunity. And if your people want opportunity, they need to have credibility. And if they want credibility, it needs to start with whatever the results are that they're expected to bring to their job.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.